Hello everyone and welcome to the next installment of Don't Panic from the Drone Bay. Today's episode we're going to talk about some fleet basics. But first, what is Don't Panic? I'm going to touch on this at the beginning of every episode because I don't know that everyone is going to watch every episode of this. So, Don't Panic is an introductory series that takes away the intimidation factor of you trying new things in EVE. Whether you're a new player and everything in EVE is new to you, or you're experienced player and just trying something different. So today we're going to talk about fleet basics, so some other potential future installments, some scouting and tackling, logistics, standings, what to do after your air campaign is done, hotkeys and shortcuts, or anything else you guys would like to see. If you have other ideas, please leave those in the comments for me. But like I said, today we're talking about some fleet basics. So the goal of today is to give new fleet pilots the knowledge they need to quickly come up to speed and contribute to fleets immediately. I want your fleet commander, your FC, to be impressed by how well you do in your first fleet. So, the very first thing you have to do is find a fleet to join. Then when you're in the fleet, we have some fleet window things to show you to set up. The majority of this episode is going to be fleet commands, so things your FC asks you to do and how to do them. And then some expectations of you as a fleet member. So first, we need to get you into a fleet. So, you're going to need to go to the fleet finder. The fleet menu, I don't know if this is here by default in the EVE client, so I'm going to show you how to get to it. It'll be in your Neocom menu up here, under social, and then fleet. And I already had the window open, so that just closed it, so let me open it again. And when you open it, I'm already in a fleet, so this looks a little different, but when you open it, you will have two options. You'll either have form a fleet, which I assume if you're watching this video, you should not be doing, because you need to learn how to be in a fleet first. And there's find fleets. So, when you're looking for a fleet, most likely you're doing it with some sort of organization, most likely your corp or your alliance, maybe your militia. So you'll go to this drop down here, and there will be my corp fleets. There will also be my alliance fleets, my militia fleets, depending on if you're in an alliance or a militia. And so you'll just select the relevant one and click Find Fleets, and it'll show all the fleets that are in that category that you're eligible to join. If you do not see the fleet you expect to find, make sure you don't have the jump distance or standing set, and make sure this box is unchecked. If you still don't see it, just ping the FC and say, hey, I can't find your fleet. Either their fleet is not open and they will open it, or invite you in if it's a closed fleet. Now, once you're in a fleet, you'll get to this window here, which shows everybody else in the fleet. And so there's different, basically, branches within a fleet. So there's the fleet commander, or the FC. Under that, there are wings, and then under each wing, there are squads. So this is just different layers of organization within the fleet. There's no rhyme or reason to, squad 1 is always this, wing 1 is always this. That's up to however you guys want to organize it. But once you're in here, what I want you to do is add your FC to the watch list. So in this case, it's my alt Malthus here is the fleet leader, so I'm going to right click him and do add to watch list. And this will put him here in this handy window. And the reason I want you to do this is because it puts them in a very easy spot to click on and interact with, because in a fleet, a lot of the time you're going to be interacting with the fleet commander, either warping to them or approaching them or orbiting them or anything like that. So I want them to be easy to get to. You can even, it defaulted here, but you can click this drop down and select the color so they stand out even more. I like to have my FCB yellow. You can pick whatever color you want. The next thing I want to do is, if you have one, add your secondary FC to the watch list, and tertiary, and quaternary, whatever the fourth one is. However many potential FCs you have, add them to that watch list, because if your primary gets killed, or has to warp off grid, or has to go somewhere else for whatever reason, the next person in line of command is going to need you to do commands as well. that interact with them. So warping, orbiting, whatever. And so they need to be there and ready. Excuse me. The last thing for the watch list that I want you to do is, if you're in a small gang, I'd say maybe up to 8 people, however many you're comfortable with, but that's a good number, is I want you to add all those people to your watch list too. Because if you're in a small group, especially if you're in a roam or you're in a standing fleet where you guys could be scattered across a couple different systems, if someone calls that they're tackled or they have someone tackled or they need help at a certain location, instead of digging around and finding them in the fleet menu, they can be in your watch list, which is a little bit easier to get to. And you can, when you right click them, you only get in space relevant commands. Or if I right click someone in the fleet chat, I get stuff like give money or start conversation, which I don't want to interact with. So in the watch list, it only gives you combat relevant information to interact with that person. So that's it for the fleet window. Next, we're going to get to the fun stuff. So fleet commands. So I can't remember if I mentioned this in an episode of the Drone Bay or not, but I see flying in a fleet, basically a fancy game of Simon Says in internet spaceships. In the game of Simon Says, you have to press certain buttons. You have to press multiple buttons in the right order. That's no different than your FC asks you to do something, and you have to do those things as you're asked to do them. I promise Eve is way more exciting than just playing Simon Says, but I think that's a very good analogy. So, I'm going to tell you what to do when your FC gives you instruction, or I'm going to tell you what those instructions mean, okay? So we're going to start out with navigation things, so moving your ship around in space. So first off, we have align to. So this just means using the feature, approach, or align to align to that object. So most of the time this is so that whenever you warp instantly because you're already aligned. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to align to things, if you hold the A key on your keyboard, you can see down here it says align to and click target. And then you just click on the thing you want to align to. I can't align to him because he's unlockable. But if you something in your overview, you can hold A and align to it. Or in space, you can hold A and align to it. Or you can hold A and align to, empty parts of space. So just like that. If you really want to, you can right click on things, align to, whatever. However you prefer to do it, that's just the easy way for me. So, next is warping to things. So I'm assuming you probably know how to warp to things. If not, just right click it, warp to, or in your overview, click the warp button. Easy as that. But usually there's a little bit more involved to that. So, and especially in fleets, there's things called fleet warps. So that is a leader of the fleet, wing, or squad can warp their relevant members along with them. And so this gets used very commonly to make sure the fleet all stays together. So this is called fleet warping, or sometimes you'll hear take my warp. And that's whoever's engaging the fleet warp, they are warping everybody. So when that happens, you don't have to press anything, you're just along for the ride. Sometimes you'll have to cancel a warp or cancel a fleet warp. Either you get fleet warped and suddenly need to not be fleet warping if information changes, or it's intentional that some people need to stay behind and not take the fleet warp. If that needs to happen, you need to stop your ship. The easiest way to do that is hold the left control key and hit spacebar. And not only hit spacebar about 800 times, okay? Because you want to make sure you do not get carried along in a warp that you're not supposed to be on. If you're so inclined, you can also click this minus button down here to stop your ship, but it seems a little bit finicky to me, so I'd vastly prefer control and spacebar. Your FC could often ask you to warp at a certain distance. So that's exactly the same. Warp to within whatever distance they ask for. They could also ask you to warp at optimal. And what this means is warp at the optimal range for your primary weapons. If you don't know what that is, that's one thing you need to be sure you know when you join a fleet. So if you don't know and you quickly need to find out, hover over your weapons down here. And I have missiles, so I just have a max range. So I have a max range of 42 kilometers. My optimal, I'll just pick somewhere between 20 and 30 kilometers. If you have a turret weapon, it will tell you your optimal range very specifically on there. And so you want to pick a warp distance that's pretty close to that. Essentially, your FC wants you to warp, and they want you to do as much damage as possible once you land at warp. So you need to be the right distance away so that your guns actually do something. Now there's something called anchoring. This is very popular in large fleets. And so what this means is you need to approach whoever is the anchor target. Let me fix this here so I can actually approach the other fleet member. So what you need to do is just approach that person. And what that will do is it will make it so that one person can fly around and the rest of the fleet is just going to follow where they go. So it allows one person to control the fleet's location during an engagement. So sometimes you might be asked not to approach, but to keep at range 1,000 or 500 or something like that. That could be FC preference, or there could be a specific reason why, to avoid bumping or anything like that. So default to approach, but if asked, be sure to know how to keep at range, which is just right here. Or you can, again, right click and keep at range, whatever they ask for. All right, FC will call for a desto, or destination. So a fleet has to go somewhere. Sometimes the journey is the destination, as they say, if you're on a roam. But usually your fleet is trying to go to a specific system. So your FC might drag that system into chat, into fleet chat, or they might broadcast it over here. We'll talk about broadcast here at the end. And so if your fleet has a destination, you need to be sure it is set as your destination. So I will just grab Jita here and put it into chat. So say that gets set as the destination, so you're just gonna right click, set destination, and so it'll pop up there. So this will let you know where you're going. It'll highlight the gates yellow that you're most likely going through, but always take FC commands over priority of the destination gates. And if you're asked to what's called make best speed to destination, it will quickly let you know where you need to go. So make best speed means you are free to jump and warp as fast as you can to get to the destination versus waiting for the FC to tell you when to warp and jump through a gate, which is conveniently our next topic. So one thing I want to point out here, the commands around gates, you can see, is twice as long as the commands for moving your ship in space. That's how important fleet commands around gates are, making sure the right people are in the system at the right time and the right people move into systems at the right time. It can make or break operations if this is done correctly or incorrectly. So the two main things to know about on a gate is when to jump through the gate and when not to jump through the gate. So if your FC wants you to jump through the gate, they will say jump, or they will say jump, 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 to make it very clear. Or they will say gate is green. That means green light, you're allowed to go through. If your FC does not want you to go through the gate, if they're good, they will not give you a command that has the word jump in it. Because if someone hears jump, regardless of whether or not the word before that is do not, if they just hear jump, they'll go. So if you hear hold or gate is red, this means do not jump through the gate. Jump on contact and hold on contact is the same thing, but it usually means you're warping to the gate first. So warp to the gate, jump on contact means jump through the gate once you're done warping. Hold on contact means you warp to the gate and then do nothing else. You sit there, take your hands off the keyboard. There's jump and hold cloak. So this means you'll jump through the gate. When you jump through a gate, you will be cloaked on the other side and you'll pop out roughly 10 kilometers away from the gate. As long as you do not take any actions, your ship will stay cloaked for a certain amount of time. That timer will show up at the top of your screen. So if your command is jump and hold cloak, jump through, take your hands off the keyboard. Do not move, don't double click in space, don't warp to anything, don't activate any modules, don't do anything unless someone tells you to. There's reapproach the gate or crash the gate. So this means you've jumped through a gate, but for whatever reason, you need to go back to the other side, or you just need to be ready to go back to the other side. So reapproach the gate means after you jump through, move back towards the gate. Crashing the gate means the same thing, but you need to do it very, very, very quickly. So turn on your prop mod, slam into the gate as hard as you can. Reapproach can also mean to do it quickly. That's going to be up to context of the situation and how your FC communicates it. So reapproach could mean fast or slow. Crash definitely means fast. And I want to be abundantly clear. This does not mean jump through the gate unless you're instructed to do so. Okay? Now you might hear +1 or scout. So this is a fleet member that is jumping through gates at the same time you are when the FC asks for people to jump, but they're going to be one system ahead of you. So they're looking to see if there's hostiles one system ahead, if there's a trap one system ahead, and that way the FC can get information on what's in front of them without dragging the whole fleet in and maybe losing the element of surprise. So if you hear +1, that is a person in your fleet who is +1 system ahead towards your destination, scouting things out. And then you might hear gate action or gate fire. So this is the large flash that happens that indicates someone has jumped through the gate, either from your system to the next system or from that system into your system. Okay. So if you're told to hold on contact and the fleet gets there and then you see a gate flash, that probably means someone didn't listen to instructions and your FC will be sad. Okay. So just keep an eye out for that. Combat. So there is, in combat, your FC will call for a primary, most likely. So this is the person you need to target and shoot first. They will also potentially call for a secondary. So also target this person and then shoot them when the primary is dead or not engageable. And then likely the secondary becomes the new primary, and then a new secondary will get called. Your FC in combat might call for you to heat your modules, overheat your modules. So this means, if you're not familiar, overheating your modules means the modules will take damage, but they will do better until they are broken. So in order to overheat your modules, you can, down here by your capacitor wheel, you can overload your racks, which will overload everything. Like this would overload all your high slots. This would overload all your mid slots. This would overload all your low slots. You can also right-click overload rack. You can also click this little green button at the top. That will also overload it. And then, yeah, that's how you overload. So be sure to, once you're out of combat, turn off overheat your modules. But basically, it'll make you do more damage or fly faster or have longer range on your warp disruption or your stasis webs. And then you'll also likely hear tackle. So if your FC calls for tackle or they need points on something, they want you to use warp disruptors or warp scramblers on that target. So point means a warp disruptor, which is longer range but weaker warp disruption. Scram means a warp scrambler, which is shorter range but stronger warp disruption. Okay, it's way harder for them to get out. Sometimes point gets used to mean both. Tackle means both. Scram usually very specifically means scram. But generally, if your FC calls for points on a target, they don't care which kind it is. They just don't want them to leave. Okay, so if they call for you to tackle, they want you to use warp disruption. All right, broadcasts. So broadcasts are in the broadcast tab over here of your fleet window. I have a couple here sampled already, but these are basically when your FC gives a command, they can also broadcast that command. And what this does is it gives you something to interact with in the client related to the command they just gave. So for example, some common broadcasts are new destination. So if I switch over to the FC for this fleet, and I can broadcast travel to. So you can see now, Mouthless Mar, travel to Jita. So you can say, I can just right click that and set it as my destination without having to search anything. They can also broadcast aligned targets, primary combat targets. There's broadcasting for reps. Depending on if your fleet is big enough or is using logistics, you'll need to know how to broadcast for reps. So down here at the bottom of the broadcast menu, there's armor, shield, and capacitor. So say I was getting hit really hard and we're in a shield fleet, I would hit this broadcast shield button. And so that broadcasts to the whole fleet, hey, I'm getting hit, okay? And that means my logistics pilots can very easily target me and rep me up. So those are the most common broadcasts, but you'll see all kinds of things in there. It's just a very convenient way to have useful information about your broadcasts and just interact with them quickly. All right, comms discipline. So I have found that EVE Online players are way, way better at this than almost any other online game, just because of how critically important information is for EVE content, which sounds all like high and mighty or whatever, but it's just kind of the genre of the game we're playing, okay? So voice comms is very important. So it's very important that you do not talk over other people who are giving information relevant to the fleet, doubly so if it's your fleet commander, okay? So if you're talking and your FC starts talking about fleet information, you need to stop talking. If you hear break or clear comms, that person is trying to convey important information while there's other things going on, and they need everyone else to stop talking so they can give that information to the fleet or to the FC or whoever they're trying to talk to, because it's important and they need to get it through. Text chat is there if you're just shooting the shit with fleet members or whatever. All of this is something you kind of need to assess in your group on how serious you guys are being at the time. But when in doubt, if someone else is talking or the things you need to talk about are not mission critical, you probably don't need to be in voice comms. All right, and what are the expectations of you as a line member? So first and foremost, you need to follow the commands that your FC gives you. Okay, so that's what we've been talking about, how to follow these basic commands. Other things you can do to help out or are expected is to watch local. So local is going to tell you everybody in the system, unless you're in wormhole space. And so if you see a large amount of people joining, that's called a local spike. So you can call that out on the comms if no one else has mentioned it. Hey, local spike. Similarly, D-spike is when a lot of people are leaving local. Another thing to always watch for is D-scan, directional scanner. In here, you want to be looking for ships that are not in your fleet that show up. And also, very importantly, if you see combat scan probes in D-scan, you want to highlight that those are out, because if your fleet's in a safe spot, someone might be trying to pinpoint your location. So you just want to make sure people are aware that that's out, and you want to find out if those are friendly ships or friendly scan probes on D-scan. And then lastly, might be kind of obvious, is watch what is on grid with you. So this is especially true if your fleet is jumping into a system and you're through the gate and you see something in your overview or in space with you that is not part of your fleet. You should call that out. So what kind of ship it is, how far away it is the two important pieces of information. If no one else called it, drop that into comms. It'll be very much appreciated. All right, and that wraps up our basically Fleet Basics 101 here to make you successful in your first fleet op. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions about what we talked about, please leave those in the comments. If you're looking for someone to fly with your first fleet in, Noir Academy is recruiting. These are incredibly knowledgeable people about the game of EVE. They have a lot of information to share, so if you want to learn, drop in our Discord. I'll have that link in the description. And come see if we're right for you. But until next time, this was Theris from the Drone Bay, and fly safe.